Hi, today we're going to have a conversation with Susan Phelps and Lauren Hartmayer, who are going to be talking to us about our work in social emotional learning as part of our GAIN approach to education here in the EVSC. Okay, so we are going to have a conversation today about social emotional learning. I mean, we could sit here and talk for hours about this, but we'll try not to make it that long. But I mean, let's just jump in. So, Susan, let's start by maybe you talk about your role, Lauren, talk about your role, and then we'll kind of get into what is SEL, why are we doing it?
So my role is Director of Neuroeducation and really supporting both the development and implementation of the overall GAIN framework, both, I would say, predominantly on the social emotional side, but also being really intentional about aligning our practices and our work with academics so that the whole child is developed.
And then, Lauren, in your role, you do what?
I am the cell curriculum support for the district, and I help with the implementation stages and also make the parts of the curriculum that are implemented in our classrooms.
Okay. And Lauren, you are a teacher by trade.
Yes, I am a teacher by trade and have been teaching kindergarten inclusion most recently here in the EVSC at Delaware Elementary. So that's where I've come from recently.
All right. So let's just jump right in. We've been doing SEL work that is really now part of our GAIN initiative, which is about educating the whole child. But for how long, and kind of just in a nutshell, how did we get here, Susan?
So I would say in 2014 was when we really began the initiative. And we really started it at a time when we were transitioning from a continuous improvement plan that we had implemented really as a corporation for 5 years, and looking at the progress that we had made and really thinking about where we needed to go next. And we had made significant gains, but there were places where you could see we were plateauing, and we wanted to understand why. And it also coincided with the time really in the research field where neuroeducation was sort of really bubbling up. And taking a look at the information and the data was there, we really noticed where we had some gaps and some real opportunities to think about education differently and be much more innovative in this next iteration of our work. And thinking about educating the whole child, really, I always think it's interesting. It is when you think about what does it mean to educate the whole child?
And I was going to ask you that because I think to some extent the term whole child has become kind of a buzzword when you're reading anything about education nationwide. You hear people throwing that term around, and I'm not trying to discount that, but it is certainly an easy term to throw around. What are we talking about when we say educating the whole child?
So when we think about educating the whole child, it really is a social, emotional, cognitive, behavioral, which in a classroom would encompass not just developing their social, emotional, and self-regulation skills, but those academic and college and career readiness skills as well. So along that continuum, what does it look to start that in pre-K, develop those skills for our students throughout their education so that when they graduate, they have the skills that they need to be successful throughout every stage of life, and maximizing their capabilities as they go through the EVSC. And
so I want to stop you with when we talk about those skills. That was the term you just used. So, Lauren, as a teacher, did you see where students needed to develop those skills? Or I guess the better question is, what does it look like if kids are not developing those skills in a classroom?
So we're really looking at kind of self-regulation and how that helps us be good learners and also are prepared to learn, and also how that prepares us for life. So self-regulation goes across our lifetime and our development, and it ranges from just being able to really help regulate your emotions and help think about your cognitive abilities through your regulation as well, and thinking about how you interact with others and being able to do that also at that regulated state where you can think through things, have that pause, that moment of reflective behavior instead of that reactive behavior. So as a teacher, when we think of those kids being able to be reflective instead of reactive, in all of the self-regulation domains, we think of then be able to pause and have that moment to think through something at a higher level before acting or before doing.
Sure.
And in that, we see better responses towards their peers and better social engagement, as well as a better ability to take in knowledge and to take it, to the next step and think through it at a higher level. So
Now, somebody who's hearing you talk could think, okay, so this is certainly geared towards young children. That is not true, correct, Susan?
No.
And I know we even talk about how this really all the way through as part of our laser focus to make sure students are ready to be successful when they leave our doors after
Sure.
graduation.
So what's interesting about the initiative is we are developing those foundational skills like Lauren is discussing, but those just to create the opportunity so that as our kids go through and get into our upper grades, then now they can apply those skills to more cognitively complex tasks so that they're good critical thinkers and have a growth mindset, which develops through our interaction with students and what we're teaching them. But it does lay that foundation for them to be collaborative, creative, critical thinkers. Those are the kinds of things that we want our students to be able to do, but you have to develop that, again, starting in the lower grades with a certain set of self-regulation skills, and then giving our students opportunities to both develop and become much better in those areas. And that actually leads into those employability skills. So
That's what I was going to ask you.
Yes.
As part of our opt-in initiative,
Yes.
where we have these great relationships and partnerships with local businesses, those are the very same skills they're telling us they're looking for an employee, correct?
Yeah. So when business owners were surveyed in 2015, the skills that they said were lacking in their new candidates or new hire candidates were critical thinking, problem solving, their ability to communicate and socialize well with each other. So sometimes we think about, well, we'll just give them some curriculum and we'll show them what that looks like. And skills don't actually develop that way. I mean, basketball skills don't develop from watching a video of a basketball play, or you actually have to show what that skill looks like and then create those opportunities to practice. So again, thinking about a vertical alignment of what that would be as a pre-K students entering elementary and then middle, teach and develop those skills in the lower grades. And then again, as they progress through, giving them opportunities for those, the application. And I think that's where, our programs, Shepherd Academy, Opt-in, and
MPA,
MBA, all of all of those then
innovative models that are looking at different
Correct.
approaches, different
Yes.
options for
Yes.
students with different learning styles.
Absolutely. So thinking about then what that's going to look like with our kids that have are now being participating in the GAIN program and using the SEL curriculum and that alignment with academics. By the time they reach middle school and high school, it's going to be super amazing. We're excited about that.
Well, and really a lot of this stems from the fact that we have put a real focus on learning how kids learn.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. Yeah. So one of the things that we talk about, and I don't want to answer all the questions, is really moving away from teaching from bell to bell and really thinking about what does it look like for our students to learn within an instructional
So let me just ask
period.
Lauren that
Yes.
question. What does, to Susan's point, Lauren, what does it look like for our students to learn when we're talking about when we're talking about through part of our GAIN initiative? Which GAIN, of course, if people listening to this haven't heard, it's a growth through academics in neuroeducation.
And innovation in neuroeducation.
Innovation in neuroeducation, exactly.
So even just thinking about their brain readiness and their fuel level throughout the day and how they can take in that knowledge and actually learn throughout the day instead of just teaching throughout the day. So thinking about what we can do to get their brains online and activate those learning centers of the brain and be able to take in this new knowledge. So thinking about refueling throughout the day is something that we ask teachers to look at, and making sure that just as adults, if you think about our time during the day as we go throughout the day, and if you're just hitting the pedal to the metal all day, how do you feel at the end of the day? You're exhausted. So and how do we act with our families at the end of the day after that exhaustion hits, right? We have very little fuel at that point. So thinking about how our kids feel throughout the day as we're going, they need that time to refuel so that they can truly learn to their best potential and be able to not only learn to their best potential, but be able to regulate through the day and emotional and socially and pro-socially and things of that nature. So really it looks like having that learning from bell to bell is thinking about how we can get their brain ready and how we can keep their brain ready throughout the
Because
day.
if students are not in a position at any point during the day to be ready to learn,
they're not learning.
they're not learning.
They're not learning.
They're not learning.
Right.
And that's different because I think sometimes you can see that as disengagement. But to Lauren's point, we really only have so much fuel to focus for so long and take in information, and then we break off. And adults do it too.
I was going to say adults in meetings, adults at work,
Right.
and, wherever.
Yeah, you can see it in always when we're doing professional development. It's usually when people check their email or their phone. So it doesn't matter how interesting you are. Focus, 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 focus. Out of fuel, anybody text me, right? And they'll check out for a couple minutes and then they come back. And so you could characterize disrespectful, you're not interested, but really it doesn't, it's neither. It's just you can only do that for so long. So teachers understanding that and kids learning, that's the reason that they've lost their focus. Students develop the self-regulation skills to do their own refueling. Teachers plan instruction around how long before we give kids just a break. And the break can look like a physical exercise or deep breathing, but it can also be the teacher changing and doing something novel or funny or something that is stimulating. So you don't actually have to stop instruction, but you do have to be intentional about bringing their attention back and refueling within that 45-minute block.
So why do you think, as educators, we have not, and schools everywhere, have not always made this part of the focus? Or have we done it in pockets? Or how would you summarize that?
I'll let you speak to that since you've
I think that some people have, done some of these things naturally,
Sure.
and not known exactly why. So consistency, maybe was something that was not always present, but in understanding why they can be more consistent and utilizing some of the strategies that we have and the resources that we have for them to help really refuel the kids and for them to understand these concepts of self-regulation. It is something that, a lot of teachers have done in the past and maybe not realized the science behind it or known how to make it consistent and when to utilize it to maximize potential.
Or somebody listening could say, I remember being in so-and-so's classroom, and it sounds like she did kind of understand that, but maybe not everyone understood that, or maybe that wasn't a consistent approach. And I guess what we're saying is we want everyone to utilize this knowledge of best practice to make sure that students are going to have the same environment no matter where they're at.
correct.
Yes, exactly.
So we have been, as EVSC, certainly because of the hard work of you all and everyone that's working with you and our district leadership, have been recognized not just in our region, but around the state, around the Midwest region, for this focus. So do you think you're going to see more schools doing this? I guess what sets us apart, Susan? Why we've done a great job, but why do you think more, or what's the best approach schools can take?
If I think about what sets us apart, I would say some of the intentionality. I would say, the ability,
The dedication to
the
this.
dedication, and just really thinking about this 4 years ago. So I do think we were early.
And we've evolved over
and
those
we
4 years.
evolved,
And
we will
full
continue.
disclosure, I mean, we didn't come out of the gate the first year
will-
being experts in this.
Correct, and we'll continue to evolve.
And nor are you implying we're
Yeah.
experts with no room for improvement at this point.
Correct. And I also think the sort of as a divergence potentially from other folks is just the breadth of it, being able to, when I think about how it integrates with vision for teaching and learning and the instructional side of the work and the college and career readiness piece, it really is an intentional part with EVSC in developing the whole child, understanding that all of those pieces are critical to ensuring that student learning is maximized and that our kids have the employability and the life skills needed to be successful when they leave EVSC. So, and how we've done that. Again, really using the science within the field of neuroeducation to guide our work. And I think that's been very labor intensive on our part because these products haven't existed and we've really had to create a lot of them on our own. So.
But while that may sound like a daunting task, I believe that's what set us apart as well. We certainly have not taken the approach, let's go on to Amazon, let's go to the bookshelf and find a book you can purchase and give it to everyone and say, there, we did it. We truly have built, and I must say, are continuing to build this from the ground up. So why is that the approach we have taken, as opposed to just saying, oh, here's a book we found on teaching the whole child, let's just give everyone a copy?
So there was really no book that had those pieces and
Okay.
all the pieces to the puzzle. So
Yeah.
really, Susan went through and found different pieces that corresponded to where we wanted to go. And then I took those apart and with Susan, and we just really dove into making it our own curriculum because there was nothing that
that did this. I mean, I
comprehensively.
would say the products that we've been able to create are unique to the EVSC and how we are developing 4 domains of self-regulation: social, prosocial, cognitive, and emotional. And I do think that's the power of neuroeducation. So taking my background in psychology and neuropsychology and Lauren's background in instruction and everyone else that has worked with this team, Tom Yell and Amber and Audrey. I mean, we have lots of folks that have contributed, but that's the educational piece of it that then allows it to go into the classroom, right? So it's really taking what we know here and being able to apply it in the field directly. And we pilot and practice a lot of things. Some things work and some things don't.
Right.
And we just continue to evolve the product. So that really, I mean, I think at the classroom level, it is something that is usable and benefits and really shows gains in our students' development.
Because really what drives us is continuing to look for ways to help our students to be better learners, to be more successful, not only this year, whatever grade level they're in, but each year of school to make them prepared for graduation.
Correct.
Now, talk to us just a second about, you mentioned some names earlier that people may not be familiar with. These are self-support staff. So talk to us about an EVSC, what that looks like, what these individuals are doing, how they're, because you may be listening to this thing and so how does this get to the classrooms? Are you just sending out an email, which is certainly not the case. So how does this look?
Well, I think so within the department, we have specialists that are working directly with our students utilizing these practices that were developed as part of the overall product to support student learning and in some cases support student behavior. But then I would also say on Lauren's end, working with interventionists in the building that have what we call self-regulation classrooms and showing them also how to refuel individual students so that learning can continue. And then I would say Lauren's part is super critical to this working, and I will use the word working because she's worked directly with the teachers to help them understand how this looks in the classroom and how you actually develop some of these skills through the instructional practices.
So we have individuals helping the students, but in that regard, you then and other individuals providing support to teachers. So what does that look like, Lauren?
So this summer we held PDs throughout the summer and trained about 500 of our teachers during that time. And continuing forward in that, I'm going to each school and touching base with the teachers during their PLC or plan time. And really just finding out where they need the supports in the curriculum, helping them through that. And then their SEL specialist also comes through and their interventionist to help guide their practices in SEL and in those lessons and how they look at SEL throughout the day. So really we have a lot of little supports in everywhere. And then I come in and help everyone kind of align their thinking and help in any way that they might need. So I'm always available for teachers for them to email me, call me, and I just make sure that I try to answer as quickly as possible and get them the help that they need. So.
And I know we've tried to be very consistent in our training with teachers that this is not something that you squeeze in the last 15 minutes of the day. When we look at this, it's truly, talk to us about how it is embedded with instruction throughout the day.
Yeah. So all of our elementary schools actually have a gain time that's 20 minutes in the day where they start the process of connecting and refueling and then introducing some of the language that we have kids think about through the self-regulation process. But then in the rest of the day, we have them continue that practice with what we call continuous skills practice, where they continue to talk about the things that they learned in those mini lessons, but also help them think about their fuel level and what they need to do to regulate through the day and to be ready to learn, and then help them refuel through those times as well. We also have an integration with our PBIS where we have taken the PBIS and taken it a little bit further and kind of graduated it into a cell.
We've kind of really brought it into CEL. And of course, PBIS, we're talking about positive behavior intervention supports. And we've really taken that and pulled it into our overall approach with GAIN with CEL.
Right.
Correct.
And through that, we have our what we call our group plan. So, kids might be coming home saying, I learned the group plan for such and such today. Or I know I talked to a 5th grade teacher yesterday, and they just were so happy to learn about how they developed the plans because it made them feel calm and understand what to do in different situations. So our group plans are really just things that our teachers are discussing with the kids throughout each school about what is appropriate and safe in different environments in the school, but also that they can take that knowledge out into the world and really try to figure out by focusing their awareness and thinking through the things that they've learned in school, they can take it out into the world and utilize that ability to figure out what's appropriate and safe in different situations out in the world as well. So,
well, and you hit on this. You mentioned what students could be experiencing. So we may have parents hearing this thinking, so what is my child experiencing? Or if they may hear something from their child. So how would you sum up for parents who are asking, what kind of things are my kids going to be talking about when they come home?
So you'll probably hear a lot of the word group plan, and that's just that thought of what is safe and appropriate.
Sure.
You might also hear them talking about things of the refueling nature. So they might hear things about taking some deep breaths when we need to help ourselves refuel and return to calm. There's other exercises like 5 and 45 where we're getting the kids up and moving, but they're very intentional in building executive functioning skills as well. So they might be doing yoga in the classroom to refuel. They might be doing some other mindful activities. You'll probably hear mindfulness quite a bit as we move forward in the year. So those are some big things that they'll probably hear a lot of. They probably will hear a lot of practicing the pause and being reflective and reactive versus reactive. And that all comes from that mindfulness piece. So they'll be hearing a lot of that.
And the interesting thing is I was having a conversation with someone recently who was in the workforce, and their particular company, from what he was describing, did some of these very same things with their team members in their office area to start the day and midway through the day. And it almost sounds like the same thing. So I assume these same strategies could work at the workplace to help everyone to focus, correct?
Yes. Well, yeah, I mean, because it still goes back to the same premise is we really only have so much fuel for the entire day, whether you're 5 or 55. And so how are you most productive? You can't, none of us literally can wake up in the morning going 100 miles an hour and maintain that effectively and efficiently until 5 o'clock. So what does that look like, throughout our day as well? So I can see absolutely where it would be important for businesses to ensure employees take breaks, right? And have a lunch and have opportunities to disengage both throughout the day and then taking their holidays, Right. I mean, I think that's not always
within a result of adding to productivity and success.
Correct. And so
job satisfaction.
And that's true for our kids as well. And so just thinking about, again, when Lauren is talking about refueling, that's really the teachers understanding when students disengage that they need to refuel so that they can return to learning. And that's really how we talk about it is let's refuel and so that we're alert and can return to learning and developing the students' self-awareness so that they have the capacity as they go through school to do those skills themselves. And so these are the foundational skills. So you'll hear a lot of that now, but then as we move through the curriculum, then we'll definitely focus on emotional self-regulation and then cognitive self-regulation, which is where growth mindset, persistence, a popular term, which is grit. But grit really comes from it's a cognitive self-regulation skill that requires kids to feel internally they have the capacity to overcome life's challenges. And that comes from how adults interact with kids and what we communicate to them about their abilities and how we support them also through their challenges. So it's not really a curriculum, but it's a practice. And that's where the adults and the adult mindsets are really critical to the success of GAIN and the curriculum itself. So.
Well, what you just said kind of takes me to my next question. So how does this look for students in a classroom who are not, they are unique. They're not the same. We know we have some students And some people may suggest that kids have changed over time or, that type of thing. You hear that. But how does this look for students who have different abilities to manage stress, handle stress, more needs, less needs to be successful? How would you summarize that?
So I would say the whole focus of GAIN is developing self-regulation and students' awareness so that they realize I need to refuel. So you would see potentially one or two students refueling on their own and returning to learning. So they're not escaping learning. They're actually refueling so that they can do better and they can learn more. And so initially the teachers will guide most of that if particularly the younger students are developing the capacity to do that. And then older students, and then the longer the curriculum is being utilized, kids will do it independently. And what we have found is when that happens is you'll see a spike initially, and then once kids are allowed to do it, it actually decreases because we are able to structure a day and kids feel what that's like and they become very efficient at it. We would be as adults too if we allowed ourselves, adults. We have an unfortunate tendency to try to go 100 miles per hour all day.
Sure. So, it sounds like we've accomplished so much, but I know you both would probably say there's a lot more to accomplish in this work. Rome wasn't built in a day. So what's next? Where do we go next with our work with SEL as part of our GAIN initiative?
So what thinking about this year is really giving our teachers time. I mean, I think it's easy to try to go too fast with this. And I think one of the reasons that we have had some of the successes that we have is that we haven't asked folks to do too much. And so really being intentional this year about supporting our teachers with the new content and with the new practices. And then over the course of the next 3 years, you'll see a vertical alignment of the curriculum. So right now, one of the things is every student really is receiving basically the same lesson adapted for their grade level. But as all students have those foundational skills, then you'll start to see a differentiation between elementary, middle, and high as far as what the students are learning. We spend a lot more time in the cognitive domain, again, persistence, grit, motivation, those kinds of things as the kids get older. And then at the younger grade levels, really spending that intentional time teaching them how to focus and develop that self-awareness for their self-regulation skills. So it's how it looks this year is not how it's going to look in the next 3 years.
Right.
So we really sort of catch everybody up. So
and you had said at the beginning of this was not going to be a year-long project. This was going to take time to shift and to see this go in the direction we wanted it to go.
It will. And it's interesting even when, Lauren's talking about group plan, I think it's probably important for folks to understand just the real intentionality of that. The idea, again, and aligning it with what we're doing in the classrooms is allowing students to do the thinking. So we can give kids commands all day long and teach them rules, but really in order for kids to understand when and how, they have to do the thinking. So that's the intentionality around the group plan, and it develops what we call social self-regulation, so self-awareness in social settings to be able to do their own thinking. Otherwise, every place you go has some rules, but they're not always explicit, and you have to kind of look around and figure out what you're doing. But if you haven't had practice doing that, you don't know. I mean, we take for granted that kids know how to do that, but this curriculum is very intentional in developing that skill. So you can walk into a classroom that maybe has a substitute teacher, figure out what everybody's doing, and go, oh, that's what the group plan is, and follow it without me having to give you, I need you to sit down. I need you to have 0 voice level. I need you to do this. I don't have to give those instructions. Right. The students learn how to take in what's happening and follow that group plan.
Sure. Before we wrap up, Lauren, you talked about over 500 individuals trained this summer in SEL. What was your big takeaway from that? Something that really stands out through all that training?
Really that our teachers are just really amazing people, and they really are just ready to do this for their kids, and really so much passion behind, all of them coming together and trying to understand and make sure that they are going to implement this in their classrooms for their kids to their best of their ability. So,
and for all their kids, I think is kind of the key to make sure this helps to make the success of all of our students.
Yes. So that was my big takeaway. What wonderful, teachers, and what big hearts they all have, and, just the wanting to do this for all of our children was pretty amazing to see this summer.
And Susan, we'll end with you. You talk about over the next few years changes. Fast forward 3 years from now, what is it you're hoping, where do you hope we're at in 3 years with this? And it's probably hard to say because this continues to evolve, but take a shot at it.
I mean, for where I would love for our kids to be is to have those self-regulation skills where they're engaged in that cognitively complex thinking and they're moving through some of that academic and social emotional material just super efficiently. I also feel like on the instructional side, it frees our teachers up to do a lot of work in ways maybe that they haven't been able to because those foundational skills may or may not have been there. So I think I think it's going to allow for an explosion of opportunities both on the social side and also our cognitive and academic sides of the work.
And again, I've thrown this out a couple of times, but just to make sure we're clear, when you say that, you're referring to all students, whether they have grown up in a situation where you think maybe they don't have as many barriers, but maybe they do. Maybe they have more barriers to learning that are more apparent. I mean, this is to target all students representing our entire community.
Sure, because remember, I'll just bring you back to the survey that our Indiana business owners completed in 2015. They were talking about all workers were coming unprepared on really the social emotional side. The ability to think critically, the ability to communicate, problem solve, be responsible. Those all workers.
All workers, whether they were doing more manual type work, whether they were coming in with degrees, everywhere in between.
Yeah, not being able to do some of those things and understanding that these are skills that develop. And I think that's just a really critical takeaway. We can teach you those skills, but that's not how you develop a skill. You actually develop a skill by engaging in that practice. And so you have to give students those opportunities, and you have to increase the complexity of that task over time for it actually to be something. So, something that's well developed. So being a critical thinker and problem solving requires both an intentional development of those foundational skills and then an increasing in that task complexity so that when you graduate and you go to seek your first job that you can knock it out of the ballpark. So, but that requires, again, from pre-K all the way through. So I think about 3 years where our kids are going to be, I think they're just going to have all of these foundational skills. And when I think about, our counseling initiative and some of those college and career readiness opportunities that our kids are going to have to practice some of those vocational interests is going to be fun.
Great.
So.
Well, certainly will not be our last conversation about this topic. We'll continue to touch base with both of you and see where we're at as we continue to move forward. Lauren, Susan, thanks to both of you for taking the time to talk with us today.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.